Hello everyone and welcome back to Eve's Book Nook. My name is Eve and I'm here today to talk to you about my September TBR. This summer has been kind of a whirlwind. If any of you watched my last couple of videos, you know that this is a new channel, so I'm so glad to have you here. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in and listening and hopefully sharing some of your to-be-read books as well. But just for some context, I am a new parent, first-time parent, and still getting the hang of things. So my TBR right now is pretty limited. I've only got 5 books that I'm for sure gonna read, and then I will share a few. I've got like a little post-it note so I don't forget the ebooks. I live right by a airport, so hopefully those planes don't come across in the audio. I don't think that they'll be super loud, but anyways, I digress. I've got physical books here as well as some ebooks and audiobooks that I wanted to share that I know I will be getting to, and then I will talk about a couple books that are like in the event that I finish these, what I hope to tackle next. So first things first, I'll talk about the physical books and go from there. The book that I'm currently reading, and I've talked about this already, is Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. This is the 3rd book in the first trilogy of the Realm of the Elderlings. This follows Fitz, who is the bastard son of the prince in waiting. And you learn very on in the first book that prince, his father, is now dead. And so Fitz is sort of this, he's an orphan, but also more importantly, he is the non-rightful heir to the throne because he is a bastard. He is, the illegitimate child. So let's not keep using that word. I mean, that's what they use in the book, but let's be a little softer about it because he is the illegitimate child to the prince. He is not the rightful heir to the throne, but he is still a threat to those who want to be in power. And so there's a lot of political intrigue in this particular trilogy. This is the first, like I said, the first trilogy of the Realm of the Elderlings. I have not read any of the others. This trilogy is called the Farseer trilogy. The Farseers being the line of men that he is descended from, the king's line. And this, I don't want to get too much into what this particular book is about, because it will give away the first 2 books. But the story continues, and this is Fitz in making his way towards the Mountain Kingdom, at least in the part that I'm at. I am about 300 pages into an 800 and something page book, so I got a ways to go, but we'll get there. Anyways, that is Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. And I will say I love this. For those of you that enjoy fantasy but aren't super into really like what is the way to describe it? I don't want to say aggressive, but like really in your face, like you have to understand all of these new ways of magic systems and blah blah blah. This has actually 2 magic systems in it, kind of 2 different I don't know, magic's not the right word, but 2 why can't I think of any word? Fantastical kind of networks or ways of living, but ultimately they are all just humans and for the most part all humans in a human world, with some magical elements to it. I don't know where my brain is going with this. I don't know why I'm like totally stopped up trying to talk about it, but it is definitely a very character-focused trilogy, which I've loved. It's kind of unusual for fantasy to have something so steeped in kind of character lore, kind of family history and things like that. Each chapter begins with Fitz's kind of narrative that he's writing in the future, talking about the world. So you get a little bit more about the world and the contextualizing the magic as you go through the story, which is great. But the story itself is Fitz's life, trying to survive it, trying to not get killed, and also do, as you can see from the assassin part, do some killing along the way. So that's book 1. I do intend to finish that in September. I've already talked for 5 minutes, so yikes. I'll pick up the pace here. Book 2 is Razorblade Tears. This is by S.A. Cosby. This is a book that I heard about on recommendation from a newer booktuber, Beth Morvant, I believe is her name, and I mentioned this in my last video, but I'm just like really desperate to read this. I went and picked it up immediately after hearing her review. So it goes to show BookTube does some good, and hopefully this will be a winner. It was for her in her vlog that I watched her read it in. This is the story of two ex-cons, two men that were in prison for seemingly a long time. One is a black man, one is a white man. Both of them have sons, and these sons are lovers. So it's this, from my understanding, it is the story of these two kind of hardened men who have been in the system, kind of reconciling the fact that they have gay sons. And this is, again, not a spoiler. This is like on the on the inside flap, but those sons are killed. And these two men who have nothing in common except for their felonious history kind of link forces to seek revenge for their sons. And I think that there's some reconciling with their relationships with their sons, and they're reconciling with their sons' relationships with each other, a relationship with each other, and kind of coming to terms with that reality while seeking revenge for these men that they loved. So those are the two physical books that I want to read, and those are the ones that I'm like, if I don't get to these in September, I'm gonna just be so frustrated with myself. The next book, and it's actually one that I'm currently in the middle of on my Libby, is an audiobook, is called The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read, and then subtitle, And Your Children Will Be Glad That You Did. And this is by Philippa Perry. This, again, I'm listening to this on audio. It's about an 8-hour audiobook. I'll put like an image of it here so that you can see it. This is a nonfiction parenting book kind of talking about breaking the cycle. And this is not, I didn't have a particularly traumatic childhood, but it is important to kind of grow and have generational learning is maybe the best way to describe how this book works, or what it's focused on. It's saying taking elements of your, and if you're in a relationship, your partner's upbringings, taking the good and leaving behind the bad, or the things that didn't work for you, and recognizing that a lot of a parent's frustration with their child is often thinking of themselves. So just to kind of simplify this, I, as a mother parenting my son, if he is frustrating me, oftentimes it might not be because of him and his actions, but because of me putting myself in those shoes when I was a child. Does that make sense? I'm not very far into it right now. It's an audiobook. I imagine that I'll just take little bits and pieces. I tend to do nonfiction on audio just because I've got a lot of stuff going on, and I find that my attention span can waver when I'm physically reading nonfiction, but if I address it as if it's a podcast and do it in like little chapter episodes, I tend to take a lot more of that info in, and tend to remember it better. I don't know why that is. I don't really think of myself as an auditory learner, but that seems to be the best way for me to take in nonfiction most of the time. The next book, and again, I'm looking at my iPad as well as this, is Poverty by America, and this is by Matthew Desmond, who is a sociology professor at Harvard. He has a PhD in sociology, and it is looking at how America, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, has some of the largest numbers of impoverished people out of all of the developed nations. And why that is. And his argument here as a sociologist is to say that to create power, you need to create inequality. Or to maintain power, you have to perpetuate the cycles of inequality, and one of those kind of ways to make people unequal is economically. So this is a book club read for me. I'm reading this for my in-person book club, which is my husband and I and a few of his friends from home. And we meet up like once a quarter or so, maybe once every 2 to 3 months, because we don't live in the same town, but we all kind of meet in the middle. And so we'll talk about that in late September or October. So I need to get on this. I'm planning on reading that as an ebook. So there we go. There's that one. And then next another ebook will be An Offer from a Gentleman, and this is by Julia Quinn. This is the third book in the Bridgerton series. And again, apologies as I'm like looking down instead of talking to the camera, but I just wanted to make sure I was getting the right info. So An Offer from a Gentleman, this is Benedict's story. He is the second oldest Bridgerton child. I mean, he's an adult, but the second oldest Bridgerton, but the third story in the series. And this is for anyone that watches the Netflix show. I have found from reading the first two, the show's better. So there you go. I like the books, but I don't think that they are anything to write home about. And I think that the show brings in characters and dialogue that makes it so much more entertaining. The only thing I will say so far, and I've only read the first two books, which are Daphne and Anthony's stories, Colin is way funnier in the books. The show has not done him justice as a character. Watching the first 3 seasons, even him as a lead, I found him to be lacking in his lines, and in the books his lines are just so freaking funny. He's just really coy and deviant, and that does not come across well in the show, and I don't think that's an issue with the actor. I think it's the script writing. They've really kind of taken away a lot of his personality, because there a lot of other characters, there's direct quotes from the books, but I don't see a lot of those direct quotes for his character. I feel like they've adapted his character to make it more dramatic, but we'll see when I get to that. Benedict's story will be coming up next on the pipeline for me. I wanted to read at least the first 4 books before the next season comes out, just to kind of play catch up. I don't think I'll read book 5, 6, 7, 8 until I'm a little bit closer to those seasons, but we'll see. I am liking them. I read the first 2 in August. What month are we in now? In August. There we go. So those are the 5 books that I'm like for sure going to read this month. And then there's some other books that I'm like kind of have on the shelves or on the virtual shelf, including I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue. This is a kind of workplace office comedy. I think it has a romance element to it as well, but it says it's perfect for fans of anxious people, and Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. This is the story of Jolene, who is like secretly putting in petty like commentary at the end of her emails, but putting it in white font, which is so dumb. Don't do that, guys. You will get caught. Don't put things that are bad in writing. Don't say bad things anyways. But anyways, she's putting them at the bottom of her emails in white font so that no one can read it, but she's just venting and getting it out there. And then eventually someone comes across it and it goes up to HR, and her punishment is sensitivity training and email restrictions. But IT mixes up her access for her email restrictions, and it ends up being that she can read like basically everyone in her department's emails. So as a corporate gal myself, although I'm on maternity leave at the moment, but there's always such petty office drama, and I work completely virtually right now for my role, and yet somehow there still manages to be just little workplace quibbles and sass. So I feel like this will be a funny rom-com. So that's a potential option. And I think that covers it for ebooks. The other physical books I was thinking about picking up, there's actually a couple fantasy, which I guess this is a very fantasy heavy month for me because Assassin's Quest is also fantasy. But 2 that I was looking at are The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is a prelude to The Lord of the Rings. He wrote this first, then he wrote The Lord of the Rings, which I've already read, and I've actually already read The Hobbit as well, but the last time I read it was 7th grade, so it's been almost 20 years since I last picked this up. And my husband and I were just watching that movie trilogy for the first time, and he kept asking me questions because he knows that I've read it, kind of the more of the Tolkien, backstory and lore, and I was like, I wish I knew, but I don't. So I think it's time to revisit this. It's been a minute, and I knew the basics of the story. But since I was, how old are you in 7th grade? 12, 13 when I first read it. It's been a minute, and I'd like to get to this sooner rather than later, just because it's kind of fresh in my mind. It's very unusual for me to watch a movie first before reading it, which is basically what's happening here. Again, I know I've already read it, but it's been so long. But because I enjoyed the trilogy, oh, let me rephrase that. The Lord of the Rings movie is far and away better than the Hobbit trilogy was, without question. It is very clear that the Hobbit is geared towards children in a way that the Lord of the Rings writing is geared towards adults, and the movies translate in that way. The script for the Hobbit was so much cornier and so much more predictable, and it just seemed like there was a lot of action for the sake of action and not for the sake of plot. So I'm not expecting a lot from this, but I know I'm going to enjoy it anyways. And I think it'll be an easy read because I've already consumed it in multiple forms in the past. And then the other fantasy book that I've been thinking about getting to for a while, and I feel like it's on my list to finish before the year end. That'll be my next video, is like all the books that I really want to read before the end of the year. But you've seen it all around BookTube. Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. The story of an orc who's tired of gore and bloodshed and bounty and is ready to hang up her hat, or hang up her sword, actually, is a very cute way of describing it on the back. But it's high fantasy, low stakes is how it's described. She's opening up a coffee shop. So this is a cozy fantasy. I've just heard such wonderful things. I don't have a lot of fantasy readers in my close circle of real life friends, so I tend to get recommendations from BookTube, and I've just seen this everywhere, just all over the place, and I think it's just due time to kind of catch up and get with the times, and then I can move on to other things. But those are the books that I'm most interested in tackling in September. I think it's a guarantee that I'll get through the first 5 that I mentioned, and then The Hobbit and Legends and Lattes are a sort of if there's time. I've been finding it difficult to read physical books at the moment because the only time that I can really do that is at night after I've put my son down. The rest of the day, if I'm, if it's nap time, or, if he's on me, ebooks tend to be the way to go for me because it's easier to scroll. And audiobooks I tend not to do unless he's not physically on me during the daytime. So if he's in his little rocker, if I'm doing dishes, that kind of thing, then I'll put on an audio. So I probably will only get through 1, maybe 2 audiobooks this month. And probably only those 2 physical books, and then everything else would be ebook, but only time will tell. So that's it for this video. That is my September TBR. If you've enjoyed any of these books, please do leave a positive comment down below to encourage me to pick them up, just so I have some motivation. If you're reading anything exciting right now and you want to share it with the class, please let me know. I'm always looking for book recommendations. And let me know what you're planning on reading in September. I'd love to hear. So thank you. I look forward to connecting with you all in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.